It's split-screen Borderlands. Nothing impressive about that until you realise that this is on a PC. Check out the taskbar at the bottom. And in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how you can set up your PC to play split-screen Borderlands as well. So let's get learning. Now, I can't take credit at all for the methods that I'm going to show you today, and there are some awesome threads around, forum threads that have taught me how to do this. So I want to give credit to Phnxfire, who started this brilliant thread on the Steam forums. I'd like to thank Sycdan, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, who started this brilliant thread on the Gearbox forums, and there's loads of other people that have asked questions and given suggestions in these threads. So I've linked both of these threads in the description, and a big thank you to everyone in them that has contributed their knowledge, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to do this video. Incidentally, I am only going to be showing you the basics today, basically how to get this running. If you want to go into more advanced options such as splitting sound, getting different types of controllers working, basically any of the more kind of advanced tweaks, there is loads of stuff in both of these threads that cover that information. So you're welcome to ask me in the comments and I will try and help, but you will probably find whatever your question is, that already has been addressed on these threads, so do go and check them out. So let's start getting into the nitty-gritty of this. How do we run Borderlands 2 split screen? Now the first issue is that Borderlands runs through Steam. Most people's copies do, and you can't run two copies of Steam at the same time, can you? Aha, well actually you can, and this is the trick that we're going to be using, because you will need to go to a website called www.sandboxie.com, and the E is spelled IE, as you can see on the website in front of me, and you need to download this software. Now this software is a really clever, really useful bit of software that's designed to protect your PC. The purpose of this software is that, say you're running a brand new program, you don't know if it's safe, you don't know what kind of changes it's going to make to your PC, you run that program, in quotes, in a sandbox, and when you're finished using that program, you can empty that sandbox, and it stops whatever particular program you're using from being able to interfere with other files on your PC, change other settings, etc., etc. So it's a security program, but we can use this same technique, this same program, to actually help us with our Steam issue. So what you'll need to do is come into Sandboxie, go to the download section, choose your download location. I chose this one here, and then you'll need to download the install file and install it. And when you do, you will eventually end up with various options like this, and I'm going to bring up the sandbox control, which gives me these options here. Now these are the boxes that I have made, and we need to make a new box for our Steam. So I'm going to go sandbox, create new sandbox, and I'm going to call it Steam 2, which is what was suggested in one of the forum threads. Now it doesn't actually matter what you name it, but you do need to remember what you name it, because you're going to be using that command later on. And here it is. This is my sandbox, and what we need to do now is we need to change some of the settings in Sandboxie to allow it to work properly, and I'll try and explain what it's doing as we go through each one. So now we need to configure and set up this particular box. All of the settings here are going to come straight from Sycdan's forum thread here. So if I go too fast or you don't quite understand what I'm saying, just scroll down to this section here where he says Sandboxie, and he'll repeat what I am about to tell you here. And we need to click on our Steam 2 sandbox, and we need to click on Sandbox Settings, and we've got a few little things we need to set up. First of all, click on Restrictions, and one of the options here says Drop Rights. We need to go into here and uncheck Drop Rights from Administrators Power Users Group and click Apply. We then need to click on to Hardware Access and check Permit Programs to Simulate Keyboard and Mouse Input and click Apply. We then need to come out of the restriction sections and go into the resource access sections, where it says file access, and one of the options here says direct access, which we're going to click on. Now this is the section where we tell this particular box which programs it can see, which files it can see, what can it do, and which ones can it see. So we need to tell it that it can see Steam, and we need to tell it that it can see the Borderlands settings contained in the My Documents folder. So I'm going to click Add. Now my Steam is kept in D Steam, but yours may well be in your C drive or anywhere wherever you've installed it. So you'll need to find that folder, add it there, and you can see that the Steam folder has been applied. And we also need to add the Borderlands 2 settings folder. So again, I'm going to hit add. Now my documents is actually stored on my F drive, but yours is probably again on your C drive. But either way, you need to find your users, you need to find My Documents, and once you're in My Documents, you then need to find My Games. And inside My Games you will find your Borderlands 2, and once you've highlighted that folder you can just click OK. And it will look slightly different when you load it up here. It'll probably say Personal My Games Borderlands 2. You could, if you want a slightly quicker route, just click Edit Add at this point and actually just copy that phrase in %personal %/my games /Borderlands 2, and that would have the same effect. Hit Apply. We can hit OK. And it'll give you a little kind of a bit of information about that. And now our sandbox is ready to go. Now you're also going to need a controller attached to your PC, because you can't control both copies of Borderlands with your keyboard and mouse. Now I have connected my PlayStation controller, and if I click Devices and Printers, you can see here, hopefully, here is my PlayStation controller. But as most Windows games, it will only actually pick up an Xbox controller. So if you've got an Xbox controller, just plug it in. It should work off straight off the bat. If not, and you've only got a PlayStation or another controller, you may well need this program here, which is called Motion Enjoy Gamepad Tool. This isn't a tutorial on that program, but if you'd like one, leave it in the comments and I will get around to making one. But basically what I'm doing is I'm using this program to trick Windows into thinking that my PlayStation controller, and if you look here, is now an Xbox controller, and if I just click Properties, you can see by a quick test that it is working and it's ready to go. So I've got one keyboard and mouse for player 1 probably, and I've got a controller for player 2. There are methods by which you can actually use keyboard and mouse twice, or you can use 2 controllers. Again, I would read through these threads if you want to know how to do that, or leave a question in the comments and I will direct you further. But I'm going to show you how to do 1 keyboard and mouse and 1 controller. So make sure you're ready with those. Now, when we run Borderlands split screen or multiple copies of it, we actually need to use some extra arguments when we run it. Now, by arguments, what I mean is, if I just right-click on Borderlands, go into Properties and click General, there's an option here that says Launch Options, and these are like the kind of little extra commands that you would put when you kind of run the program. But what I don't want to have to do is change the options here, and then change it when I want to play single player, change it back when I want to play split screen, change it when I want to run it with different players. It's going to get far too complicated. So instead, what I'm going to do is create some batch files. Now, a batch file is basically a text document that runs a list of commands to your computer. Now what I did is I came onto my desktop, and of course you can put this anywhere you want, and I created some batch files for this purpose. My folder's called Borderlands 2-player batch, or bats, and you can open it up here and you can see the files that I have made. But just to show you what a batch file does, if I just right click and I hit New, and I'm going to hit Text Document, and I'm just going to create one called Test to show you what it does. But I'm going to put Test here, and then I'm going to change the TXT at the end to BAT, which is then going to tell Windows that this is no longer a text file, it is a batch file. When it says if you change a file extension it might become unusable, you just want to say yeah, that's fine in this case, and then don't left click on it. Okay, if you left click on it, it will run. If you right click on it, you can see you should have a few options here, one of which is open, so that will run it, and one of which is edit. And just to show you a quick example of how it works, if I just write in the text file here, mspaint.exe, and then go File, save, and then close that down. And now when I run this, rather than just opening it like a text file, it will treat it as a command. So when I open it, there's MS Paint. So what you can do in a batch file is any kind of list of commands you want. Now that does mean you need to be careful if you ever pick up any batch files from people online, that you trust them and that you know what it does. And if you're not sure, right click on it, hit edit, and read through everything that it does, because you don't want to put your computer at risk. So we need to make ourselves some batch files for player 1 and player 2, and you can name them whatever you want, but as you can see, what I've done here is I've labelled them very clearly so I can see what I'm running, and I've actually got two sets of two. I've got one pair which literally just runs the game in small windows, and then I've got another pair which runs it in the split screen arrangement that you saw earlier. Now, if you're lucky enough to have two monitors attached to your PC, dual monitors, the best way of running Borderlands would be to have one copy full screen on one monitor and one copy full screen on another, even if you're running it at a lower resolution. And so that's what I've got here. This version here will give me ones that will fill the monitors on my first and second monitor, and these two here will give me the ones which are like half and half. So let me open one up and you can see what I have done. Now when you're making this yourself, of course, remember you'll go new file, new text document, and then you'll turn it into a batch file and then go in and edit it. But let's see what we've got here. The first thing the line needs to include is telling it to run the Borderlands exe, and you need to do the full address for the exe file, and you need to put some quote marks around it, because you'll probably have some spaces in here somewhere. Can you see where there's Borderlands 2 there? That's a space, and if you don't put a space, it won't. If you don't put the quotes around it, it will treat that space as the end of the command, so you need that. You then need 3 arguments to go with it. Some of them are kind of optional and some of them are just kind of helpful, but there's lots of things you could include. The first one is AlwaysFocus, or -AlwaysFocus. This one is telling Borderlands that even when it isn't the front window, it should be able to respond to the controller in particular, and if you don't have that one there, you won't be able to control both at the same time. The second argument tells it to run windowed. If you don't run it windowed, it will try and run full screen, and if it does, you can't see both at the same time. And then this last one here is a bit more optional, but I'm just telling it where in the screen to appear, and I told it to start in 0, so that's going to start up this top left hand side of the screen here. Once again, if you go to the Gearbox forum thread started by Sycdan and scroll down to here where you can see the batch files, he tells you what all the options do, and he tells you about the optional ones that you can include. So just because I've done it with these arguments doesn't mean you need to copy me exactly. You can tweak and change as you go through. He's also got in here some extra little commands in relation to sound, because when he plays it with his wife, he sends one copy of the sound through one set of headphones and one copy of the sound through another. But I'm not going to be doing that today. I'm going to be running both sets of sound out through the one set of speakers. So that batch file is now ready to go. If we were to just click open on that one, it will run Borderlands for us, which is great. But before we do that, let's set up the second file. Now this one is going to be slightly different. So again, remember, you'll need to go new text document, change it into a batch file, name it something sensible, and click edit. And whoa, this one looks a bit more complicated. Now the first thing you've got to know here is this is all on the same line. Okay, so if I do that, it looks like I've got 2 lines, but actually I've got 1. And you've got to be careful with things like word wrap here, that you don't save it on 2 lines, because if you save it on 2 lines, it will read it as 2 different commands. Now this command is going to run through Sandboxie, through the Steam box, and then run Borderlands. Okay, and once again, I'll put this command into the description box below so you can see it. And in fact, I might even upload these to MediaFire so you can see my files. But basically, you can see it runs my Sandboxie. So you'll need to edit this for your particular drive, because mine's an F drive, yours might not be. You'll then need to include the arguments elevate box Steam 2, and then we've got the Borderlands 2 exe again. This time, we've got a new argument, NoLauncher. That means we're not going to see the graphic settings when we first load up. AlwaysFocus is still there. Windowed is still there. This time I'm starting it in a slightly different position on the screen, but you don't have to include that. That one's completely optional. Now these two are going to be useful for you depending on what you are doing. ControllerOffset 1 is going to be handy if you're going to run two controllers, because it's telling it which controller to work with. So this would now be the second controller because it's offset by 1. So I don't need that actually if I'm doing mouse, keyboard and one controller, but I'm leaving it in anyway because I do sometimes plug in the controller. But this one you are going to need, SaveDataId equals number 2. This means that the second player is going to be using a different set of saved games to player 1. Now if I go into my documents, my games and Borderlands 2, and then go into where you can find the save games, which is here, save data, this one with the ridiculously big number is my normal save games, and here they are. I've got 6 of them at the moment and a profile. And here we've got a folder simply called 2, and this is the one that has been created by me doing a 2-player Borderlands. Now at the moment there's really nothing in there. When I run it, it's going to assume that this is a brand new game of Borderlands. But if I did want to put my existing characters in there, all I would need to do is grab this, copy this, go into this folder 2, and then paste them. And then I've got all my badass points, all my weapons, all my save games in player 2's folder as well. And you may want to do that, you may not, but what you mustn't do is have both of them reading out of the same folder, because if you do you'll have problems with saving the games. So now we've got our batch file set up. We need to click save, and we are ready to run the game. Okay, so we are now ready to run Borderlands split screen. My PC at the moment is going to have video recording software and 2 copies of Borderlands running, so it's going to look pretty bad on the video, but trust me that it's looking pretty good on the PC. So we're going to run the first batch file. Remember, all this is doing is running a copy of Borderlands in a window with an AlwaysFocus tab. So we're just going to click open on that. We'll briefly see the batch file pop up, and Borderlands loading screen will appear, and we should end up with a nice small window with Borderlands, our first copy of Borderlands, running in it. Remember, on the recording software here, it's going to look pretty jerky, but in real life, in real time, it looks fine. And you can always use the Alt Tab option here to kind of get yourself outside the window. And this video, remember, this window was about 720 size, so it's basically half high definition. Now what I can do with it is I can actually just drag it across to my second monitor if I take it off to the right hand side here, and that's how I would normally play it. So it doesn't, so the 2 players don't get in the way of each other. And I can also check at this point that my controller is working. So if I show here that this is my mouse moving up and down, and then this is my controller. So yep, that is working, which is fantastic. And then I'm just going to minimize this to ease the strain on my PC while I load up the second one. Now remember, the second batch file is the more complex one. It's going to be using Sandboxie, NoLauncher, different save data, and it's going to take longer to load up, but we can actually watch what it's doing. So if I bring up Sandboxie here, when I run the file we can see what happens. Okay, so let's run the second copy of Borderlands. Depending on when you installed Sandboxie, it may give you a license window like that, but it won't stop you using the program. It may say I want administrator control, in which case you can say yes. And we can see here what it's doing. See, these 3 little things have popped up. It's trying to run Borderlands, but because Borderlands is a Steam game, in a minute that Borderlands 2 will disappear to be replaced with Steam. And it will ask us if we wish to run Steam offline or online, and of course we want to stay offline because we've got 2 copies of it running. And once Steam has loaded up, it will then be able to load the second copy of Borderlands as well. So note there, see the change there from Borderlands 2 to Steam, and we can see the familiar black box of Steam here, start in offline mode. And once it gets in, it should start running Borderlands. However, I've done this a few times now, and sometimes you will get to this stage and it will stop just after running Steam. And if that happens, you don't need to close that second copy of Steam down. Just run the batch file again, and it should kind of pick up where it left off. And here we can see our second copy of Borderlands is loading up. And here's the menu screen, and can you see there's this little yellow border around the this copy of Borderlands? That means this is the one that's actually running in the sandbox, which is an easy way to identify which copy is which. This little sandbox here that is running. And now we have two copies of Borderlands going on the PC. This is the second one, the one I'm going to be using for the keyboard and mouse. Note no outlines and low graphic settings, because that's what we set up. And let's bring up the original copy of Borderlands that we had before. So here we are, and now it's just a case of deciding who we want to host. I'm going to host with my original copy, so I'm going to click Find Game with this one here. Note I can, even though this copy is not at the front, I can still use the controller to control it, which was that option that we put in the in the launcher. And then we just join, just like you would with a normal multiplayer one. You can see up here now it says TheAdipose, and it's ready to go in game. And as soon as I hit continue here, it will take both characters into the game, and we are now playing Borderlands 2-player on one PC, split screen. And now we're in playing Borderlands, and we can see, if I move my characters around, we can see both characters can see each other quite happily. The only thing you really need to decide is how you wish to play it now. You can put it on dual monitors, and I could drag one window off to one screen and one onto another, or we can fiddle about with the shapes and sizes of the screens to fit it on split screen like I did in the introduction. The other thing that we can do is if we wanted to play with 3 or 4 players, but one of them was not in this house and lived somewhere else, you can set up a fake local area network through Hamachi and actually get your buddies in here as well. So in theory, you and a mate could play with another mate and his friend on another PC elsewhere. If you're interested in how to do that, you can try and work it out yourself, or you can leave a comment and I will try and tell you in a future video. If you wanted to go the weird split screen route with the kind of like having one copy of the Borderlands taking up the top half of the screen here, you do that in the launcher options here. So this is player 1 split screen, and it's exactly the same as it was before. The file, AlwaysFocus, windowed, full screen, although windowed would have been fine as well. But this time you can see these extra commands here: ResX, Resolution X 1920, and Res Y 540, very unusual resolution, but basically that's half of the screen. If you do run it this way, it will have a weird, it won't quite be 90 degrees field of view. It's actually slightly more, and it looks a little bit odd, but it works absolutely fine. So if that's the only option for you and you don't have dual monitors, then add those settings in, and it will work fine. You also need to tell it where exactly on the window on the screen you want it to start, in which case it's 00. And if we look at player 2, you can see it still runs through Sandboxie. It still's got no launcher, and again we've got this unusual resolution here. And this time the window position is still starting on the far left, but now it's starting halfway down the screen before we tell it which controller to use and which save ID to use. And again, I'll put these full commands in the description and probably in the download file as well, which you can look at. Just make sure you edit all of these files so it is your address for the Borderlands and your address for Sandboxie. Well, I hope you found this video useful and hopefully entertaining. I would love to have a subscription on the channel or a like for the video to encourage others to see it too. Let me know what your experiences are like with this. We are doing some quite advanced tweaks here, but let me know in the comments section how it goes, and I will see you soon. Take care.